Hello, and welcome to this webinar, which has been designed to provide students with the latest information on applying for the graduate visa. I will be discussing the graduate route in this webinar and will not be going into any other details about any other types of visas. So my name is Minoti Balraj, and I work in international student support at the University of Exeter. Our team are all trained immigration advisors, and we are experts in student visa applications in particular, but we also advise students on preparing for their graduate visa applications. Other than our website, another useful source of information about the graduate visa is the UKISA website. UKISA are the UK Council for International Student Affairs, and we have linked their website as well as ours in chat. So what is the graduate visa? Well, the graduate visa is a 2-year visa for undergraduates and postgraduate students, or a 3-year visa for PhD graduates that allows students to work or look for work in the UK without having to be sponsored by an employer or the university. The visa is granted for a fixed period, and it is not possible to apply for less or more time than the 2 or 3 years you're eligible for. The eligibility criteria is straightforward, but it's also quite strict. So we will look at this in more detail in a minute. But for now, I'd just like to highlight that eligibility is not automatic, and you will need to meet certain requirements. It is also a one-time only visa, which means that you can only apply for the graduate visa once. So if you are currently an undergraduate student thinking about either working or doing a master's course next, or a postgraduate student trying to decide between a PhD or work, you really do need to decide what you would like to do first, and perhaps wait until a little closer to your visa expiry date to apply for the graduate visa, when you have a clearer idea of your plans. Also, remember not to apply before you meet the eligibility requirements, as if you do apply too early, your visa will be refused. Okay, so in this webinar, we are going to look at 3 different areas in detail. We will talk about how to apply, including the eligibility criteria I mentioned earlier, and where and when to apply. We will also go through what you need to prepare and the supporting documents you will need to submit. And finally, the conditions or rules surrounding the graduate visa once it has been granted. So firstly, in order to be eligible to apply, you must be in the UK on a student or Tier 4 visa, and you must apply before it expires. The second requirement is that your degree must be awarded. The university needs to notify the Home Office that you have successfully completed your degree, so you will need to wait until the university has done this before you submit a visa application. You will receive an email from the university once the Home Office has been notified, and do not need to contact us specifically to request this. If you apply for the graduate visa before you receive this email, your visa is likely to be refused. The third requirement is that you need to have been physically studying in the UK on a student visa. For courses longer than 12 months, so that would be undergraduate programs, PhD courses, or 2-year master's programs, students are required to be in the UK for a minimum of 12 months of their program on a student visa. For courses that are 12 months or less, so that would be our 9-month or 12-month master's programs, you are required to be in the UK for the entire duration of your course on your student visa. This does not include vacation periods when you are allowed to travel, and we will talk about travel in a minute, and also some of the COVID concessions around remote study, which I'll also address in a minute. And finally, if you've been sponsored by your government or an international scholarship agency, you will also need their permission in writing in order to apply for the graduate visa. So I think the first requirement on this list is pretty straightforward. So let me give you a little bit more detail about the second and third requirements. So when will you be awarded? So these are the approximate times when different groups of students will be awarded. Undergraduate students without any referred or deferred assessments will be awarded in late June. Master's students who started in September will be awarded in November of the following year, and January start master's students will be awarded in March of the following year. PhD students will be awarded after they have submitted their corrected thesis, which is after the viva and corrections. It can take approximately 3 weeks from receiving your results to being awarded. And you do need to wait for the email from the university to say the award has been confirmed to UKVI. You should not apply before you receive this email, otherwise your visa will be refused. You don't need to request this email. However, if you have been awarded but not received the email yet and your visa expires in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then do get in touch. So, for example, an undergraduate student who completed their course as planned can expect to receive this notification email by the second week of July. But what happens if you have deferred some of your assessments or if you have resits? Well, let's look at this scenario in a bit more detail because you are unlikely to be awarded within these timeframes. So if you have referred or deferred assessments, this can affect your graduate visa eligibility. Okay, and this is because there are only a limited number of situations where you will be able to extend or apply for a student visa to cover these reassessments. This can happen if your degree is awarded after your student visa expires. So on our timeline here, we have a timeline to show you what would happen normally if you are awarded in time. But for a master's student, for example, who is given an extension or asked to resubmit their dissertation or coursework later than planned, this might mean that their results and award are not released until very close to or after their visa expiry date. Okay, and in this situation, it is likely that these reassessments will affect graduate visa eligibility. So more information can be found on our retaking exams or modules webpage, which we've linked to in chat. To check when you will be awarded following any referred or deferred assessments, or for more specific advice on the type and location of these assessments, you will need to speak to your college info point, as we're not able to advise or influence on this. Okay, but just to make you aware that resits and deferred assessments are very likely to affect graduate visa eligibility. So now let's look at the third requirement, which is the study in the UK requirement. UKVI are very strict about the amount of time they expect you to have studied in the UK. If you are on a course of 12 months or less, so a 9 or 12-month master's program, you are expected to have studied your whole course in the UK on a student visa in order to be eligible for the graduate visa once you complete your program. Students on courses of longer than 12 months, so undergraduate students, PhD students, and master's students on 2-year programs are expected to study in the UK on a student visa for at least 12 months of their course. The study in the UK requirement doesn't mean, however, that you can never leave the UK during your studies, but we would recommend you limit your travel to times when you are not required to attend class, like Christmas and Easter breaks. If you do need to travel during term time, you do need to make sure that your academic department are aware of your absence and that this time away from classes has been authorized. The university will confirm that you meet the residency requirement for graduate visa eligibility as long as you have met all attendance and engagement requirements for your modules and attended in-person check-in at times when these are required. For dissertation modules, if you are not required to have in-person contact, longer absences from the UK are likely to be acceptable. You should be aware, however, that you will need to declare your travel history on the graduate visa application form. UKVI have said that they do not intend to carefully scrutinize this travel history, but we have to advise that there is a possibility that they will do so and that they may question any long absences during your course. So at the moment, we do not believe they are likely to do this, but you do need to be aware of the possibility. If you wish to avoid any risk to your graduate visa application, you should ensure that any absences from the UK during term time, including dissertation periods, are short. And I should also say at this point that we are not able to comment on individual like travel plans and travel dates to approve of these, okay? So due to COVID and remote studying, UKVI have had to put in concessions in place for study in the UK requirement we have just discussed. There were very strict deadlines for when you had to return to the UK if you had been remote studying. The deadline to return to the UK was 30th of June, 2022. And remember that this was only for students who were remote studying and does not apply to campus-based students who have been here for the duration of their course. Master's students who started courses in September 2021 or Jan 2022 and undergraduate students who are completing this year will need to have returned to the UK by the 30th of June and completed their studies in the UK in order to be eligible to apply for the graduate visa. Undergraduate students completing in June 2023 or beyond would have needed to return to the UK by September 2022, but will also need to make sure that they have spent at least 12 months of their course in the UK. PhD students will also need to make sure that they have spent at least 12 months of their course in the UK in order to be eligible for a graduate visa. Okay, so the graduate visa does allow you to bring dependents to apply, does allow you to have dependents applying with you in the UK. However, they do first need to be in the UK as your student dependent. So if your dependent partner or children are currently outside the UK, they will first need to submit student dependent applications to join you in the UK and then apply with you to switch to the graduate visa. If they're in the UK in another visa category, so a student visa of their own or a work visa, for example, and you would like them to be your graduate visa dependent, they will also need to first switch to a student dependent before they can apply as your graduate visa dependent. If you would like further information on preparing a student dependent application to bring your dependents to the UK, you will need individual advice, and we'll put a link to our dependent web pages and our contact details in chat so you can get in touch with us regarding this. So where and when can you apply? Well, the application process is actually very straightforward. You can only apply from within the UK after you have been awarded your degree, but before your student visa expires. It's an online application form, which also takes you through the process of paying the immigration health surcharge and the visa fee. Most applicants do not need to attend an appointment as UKVI reused biometrics submitted in the past. You only need to submit your graduate visa application before your current visa expires. So do remember that it's not a problem if you do not receive your graduate visa before your student visa expiry date. As long as you submit before this date, you are covered by the terms and conditions of your student visa till the graduate visa is granted. Okay, so now let's look at the costs involved with applying and the applying for the graduate route. These are just the visa fees and the immigration health surcharge rather than funds you need to deposit in your bank account. Unlike the student visa application, there is no requirement here to show evidence of finances as part of the graduate visa application. The immigration health surcharge is at the higher rate of £624 per year. This works out to £1,248 for the 2-year visa for undergraduate and postgraduate students and goes up to £1,872 for PhD graduates for the 3-year visa. These amounts need to be paid in full by credit or debit card at the point of application, and you cannot choose to apply for anything less than the full period you're eligible for. So for example, as a PhD graduate, you have to pay for the 3 years and you cannot choose to apply for just 1 or 2 years. In addition to this, there is an application fee of £700 that also has to be paid by credit or debit card at the point of application. So this all adds up to quite a lot of money, and more so if you have completed a PhD and have dependents. So it's definitely something to start thinking about and planning for well in advance. So now let's look at the documents you need to prepare. So most students will not actually need to submit any documents with their visa application, but some students will need scans of their passport and BRP card if they have not been able to use the UK Immigration ID Check app as part of their application. These documents will need to be uploaded to UKVI after you have submitted your application. If you have been sponsored by your government or an international scholarship agency in the past 12 months, you will also need a letter from them giving you permission to apply for the graduate visa. And finally, you will need your CAS number from your last visa application. You don't need to request this, as this will be included in the email to say we have notified UKVI of your award. So the application form is a lot more straightforward than the student visa application form. The process itself is fully online, and you need to start by scanning your BRP card with the UK Immigration ID Check app. You then fill in the online application form, pay the IHS and visa fee, and upload scans of your documents if needed. As I mentioned earlier, your biometrics are reused, and you do not need to attend an appointment in person. If for some reason the app is not able to scan your BRP card, the website signposts you to a different version of the application form that you can use when you're not able to use the app. So there are certain conditions attached to the graduate visa that you do need to be aware of, and we will discuss the work and study conditions in more detail in a minute. But I'd just like to highlight that on the graduate visa, you are not allowed to access public funds, and this includes benefits such as tax credits from the UK government. So what are the work conditions and what type of work can you do? Well, you can basically do anything other than working as a professional sports person or coach. You are allowed to work full-time or part-time. You can use this visa to do an internship or to volunteer. You can be self-employed or freelance, or you can do a combination of all of these things. You can work full-time hours once you have submitted your graduate visa application and while it's being processed. But the current advice is that you should not start a permanent full-time contract until you have received your new graduate visa. So it's fine for you to start your job on a fixed term or temporary contract till you have received your graduate visa, when you can switch to a permanent contract. If you are starting your own business, you should not register your new business till you have received your graduate visa. So although study is allowed on the graduate route, it is quite heavily restricted, and you are not allowed to study any course for which it is possible to be sponsored under the student route. So you cannot use your graduate visa to study a full-time undergraduate, postgraduate, or PhD program, or even a part-time postgraduate or PhD course, as you can study all of these on a student visa. You can, however, study a part-time undergraduate course or other short courses, evening classes, things that you would not be able to do on a student visa. So the best way to check would be to ask the course provider if they would sponsor a student visa for the course you are interested in. If yes, then you will not be able to do this under the graduate visa. If they would not sponsor someone for a student visa for this course, then you could do it under the graduate visa. Okay, so that was a brief overview of the graduate visa. Thank you for attending our webinar, and please have a look at the websites we have linked to in chat. If you do have any questions, we do run regular online drop-ins, and you can book into these to meet with an advisor for a quick chat online, or you can email International Student Support at this email address, and we'll be happy to help. We'll put all our links in chat, so do have a look at them.